Welcome to Wellevate. Today we're going to talk about the 5 different flavors to use in the kitchen to expand your repertoire of cooking. So we have sweet, we have savory, we have sour, and we have salt, and we also have bitter. So we're going to start off with the salt. A lot of people haven't been using salt for years. It's been a taboo, especially when it comes to blood pressure issues or potassium balances. I personally use salt all the time. I don't excessively use salt, but I do use salt in most of my cooking. I do find that it actually expands and opens up the flavors of the foods that I'm using. So the idea is that you want to choose the right salts, right? So a refined, processed, coarse salt in the middle of the aisle at the grocery store is maybe not the ideal. I choose to actually use a salt that is coarse and usually gray in color. That is a sea salt. Sea salts are pretty much commonly everywhere. You'll see this even in the main aisles in the grocery stores. So I use a Celtic sea salt. This is the one I typically use. I don't know if you'll be able to find it near you. It's very coarse. It's gray in color, and sometimes you'll find that it's a little bit wetter as well. But this is the actual salt. You can see it's very heavy and thick. So I tend to use that. I will also use olives from time to time, and I'll put these in the food processor with a soup, or I'll add it into stir fries instead of using salt, and then you get some good fats with the olives as well. If your dish is too sweet or too sour, then you can add salt and it'll cut that taste out. Okay, on to savory. So what is savory going to do? Savory is going to actually increase a body of a dish. It will add a certain depth to the dish as well. Certain things that will add savory, some things I don't have. A miso paste will actually add quite a bit of savory taste. So miso paste is fermented soybeans. It comes in like a red paste or a white paste. You can find this in any ethnic area in the grocery store or in a Japanese grocery store. It's actually great for kind of putting like a thin layer on top of fish. If you mix the miso and just kind of whisk it with a little bit of oil and then use it as a marinade on the fish and then bake your fish, it's actually fantastic. Another thing that is savory is soy sauce. Okay, you know Asians use a lot of this, and I enjoy Asian cooking the most, so I do use a lot of my Bragg's alternative soy sauce. You can also use sun-dried tomatoes. Sun-dried tomatoes are great for adding into dishes to add some depth and some flavor into there. Parmesan cheese, of course, will add a little bit of salt and savory. Also, shiitake, dried shiitake mushrooms are great. If you soak the shiitake mushrooms and cut them up, sliver them up, soak them in a little bit of water for a couple of hours, then it'll just bring more flavor out into a dish. If you're stir frying, if you're of course making a soup, you can just put the dehydrated shiitake mushrooms right into the soup to add that depth. You can also use anchovies as well. That's going to add some nice depth into the dish as well. Okay, so that's savory. Okay, so sour. Sour is pretty self-explanatory. You have vinegars, you have lemons, you have limes. So I typically have a pure lime and a pure juice on hand in my fridge. Unfortunately today I only have the lime, so I'm just going to tell you lemon and limes are fantastic for this. I will often stir fry vegetables, and at the very end of the dish put like a squeeze of lemon or a couple drops of lime after finishing cooking before I serve the dish, just to add a little bit of a hit to that. There is a couple of different vinegars you can use. I predominantly use apple cider vinegar from Bragg's again, and I always have a rice vinegar on hand for when I am cooking more Asian dishes. I will often have vinaigrettes at home. Bragg's makes really great vinaigrettes. This is a Hawaiian mix one. It's one of their salad dressings. So if I'm making a little bit of a stir-fry dish and I want a different flavor, then I'll add in the Hawaiian vinaigrette. They have a raspberry vinaigrette. They have balsamic-based vinaigrettes. Most grocery stores obviously are going to have salad dressings with vinaigrette bases. Just be aware that usually there's a lot of sugar in those. So read the labels and make sure that there's not added sugars to the salad dressing, so you're not getting, unwanted bad calories and unwanted refined products. So we're going to go on to sweet now. So when it comes to sweets, I don't really use a lot of sweets in my meals. I typically will have some xylitol or stevia on hand. I don't have either on hand right now. I find that the xylitol has a lighter taste to it. Stevia is quite strong. Some people don't have a problem with this. Both of these are alternative, non-chemical, low glycemic, great for diabetics. Sugars, forms of sugar, that's not going to bother you. Now when it comes to agave or honey or maple syrup, even if it's organic cane sugar, this is still, a refined carbohydrate and it's a high glycemic sugar. So I would advise to use it sparingly. I do always have unpasteurized sugar or honey at home, and I do usually have maple syrup also. And I do use those. I'll use them mainly in my desserts that I'm creating. Again, I use it very sparingly, and it is considered a treat. I will use also coconut sugar often in my baking. I just don't like the taste of the xylitol and the stevia, but that's just my personal choice. But for everybody else that can use it, I would really encourage it. Like I said, the sugars are, trying to choose low glycemic sugars versus high glycemic sugars, meaning like how much sugar is in that form, how rapidly is it going into your bloodstream. So with sugar flavoring, you're going to want to use this if a dish is too sweet or too salty. It will cut a little bit of an edge. So if you're cooking and you're like, oh, this dish is a little bit too salty for me, add just a little bit of sweetness to it, not overly, but just a little bit just to cut it, just so it's not so powerful. Okay, so bitter. Bitter, you're going to actually see this more in the foods you're cooking with. So those leafy greens that are being really pushed for nutrition, yes, they're optimal nutrition. They have a lot of minerals in them. That's why they're so deep green. And a lot of people don't know how to really cook with them. And because they're so bitter, a lot of people don't enjoy them. So what are some bitter veg that you're going to see that are going to be pushed? You're going to see kale. You're going to see arugula. You're going to see rapini. You're going to see radicchio. You're going to see dandelion roots, so forth. So yeah, again, they're super bitter. So, use garlic, use some salt. You can even use some sweet if you want. The sweet will definitely cut the bitterness. So that's a little trick there. So if you're cooking with something bitter, add a little bit of sweetness. Obviously, use this in moderation, depending on what sugars you're going to use specifically, but use in moderation to cut the bitterness out. I typically will use garlic and a little bit of sweetness in there with some olive oil. In the future blogs, you're going to see how to cook this, of course. Now, with dishes that are really sweet, so if you've made something too sweet, like let's say like some kind of pudding of some sort, like a chia pudding, you can shave some dark chocolate on there because dark chocolate is very bitter, and that will help with this, cut the sweetness out of it. So some other options that are not on the 5 flavors, but things that I often cook with. So I use tubes of my spices a lot. I always have them in the fridge. Other than my fresh garden that I'll have in the summertime, I'm in Canada, so we don't have all season vegetables, of course. But even regardless, in the summertime, I still use these. You can buy them typically in the vegetable aisle, typically where the greens are, in fact. So I always have garlic, I have ginger, I have the Italian herbs, I have the basil, I have the cilantro. They're a little bit more of a costly item, but they have a huge impact on your cooking because you're not chopping so much the garlic or chopping the ginger, and it's quick and easy and it yields a lot of flavor. So I would highly recommend using these and having these as a base in your kitchen for cooking. I use a lot of what's called Patox curry paste as well. So this comes in different flavors. You can get tikka masala, you can get, this one is just a mild curry paste. I use this in curry dishes, of course, for stir frying. I will use this in making a dip. I'll use this, and I will use this in the next vlog for actually making latkes. Zucchini latkes with a little bit of a curry hint in there as well. So again, this is a Patox paste. It goes a long way and it'll yield quick, easy flavors for you, so you're not spending half an hour to 45 minutes building a dish with flavor. This is immediate, quick hit of punch of flavor. Dijon mustard or any kind of mustard, it adds a little bit of that vinegar sour taste into a dish. If you like that taste, the vinegar taste, then using mustard in dishes actually will have a nice subtle hit to it. Obviously, if you're using a Dijon and if it's grainy, then that's going to change the texture of the dish. But I use mustard a lot for the vinegar aspect, so that would be under the sour. Wine. I use always wine. I will use wine a lot. Typically when I'm using wine, I'm going to be using wine if I'm stir frying vegetables. I'm going to use that in a higher heat typically once the vegetables may be around halfway done. I'll put wine all along the edge of my wok and let that wine fuse into the vegetables. So you want to add the wine if you're stir frying in when it's at a higher heat, and the vegetables will be fused with the wine. I use a lot of wine when I'm using the crock pot or stewing. I don't eat a lot of animal meat specifically. Maybe once a month I'll have some form of animal meat, and of course it's usually grass-fed and organic and local if I can find it, but I'll definitely use red wine in that. White wine I will use a lot in my soups, and I'll use sake a lot. So don't hesitate to use any kind of alcohol. The alcohol will evaporate once you've heated it, but it'll add some smoothness. I find that when you add the alcohol, like the wines, or even cognac or something different into your actual dishes, it actually smooths all the flavor out. It's almost like, that's what I can describe it. It smooths it out. A great product that I want to bring everybody's attention to, just because I love it so much, is an avocado oil mayonnaise. A lot of the mayonnaises uses like a corn canola mayonnaise, and they have sugars in there. It's really refined processed foods. This is a more expensive mayonnaise, but it is made out of avocado oil, so you're really getting a good omega-369 in there. It's a good fat for you. You can get this at any health food store. They do carry it at the larger chains in Canada. They do carry it at a place called Costco now. That's in Canada, but you could probably source this out if you're outside of Canada at any health food stores. I use this a lot when I'm creating dips. Instead of having like a mayonnaise dip, or I'll use this in cold salads in the summer, you'll see me use a lot of this as I move through into my vlogs, especially my cooking vlogs. Of course, your oils are going to be important. Now, a good healthy coconut oil is great. It is good for high heat as well. Olive oil, of course, a good olive oil. I would really highly recommend avoiding canola oil, corn oil, like any of the grain oils. I would stick to an olive oil, a coconut oil. They're more stable fats when you're cooking. Ghee is really actually a gold standard for this. It is a really high ticket item. I do use this. I have it usually on hand, but I use it sparingly for like really refined high-end dishes. Or if I'm giving myself a treat as popcorn or something, I'll use it on that. But popcorn is a treat. You have sesame oil too. A word of advice: when you're using sesame oil, use just a drop. If you're using some Asian or cooking Asian dishes, use a small little drop. It's very overpowering, in fact. If you use too much sesame oil in a dish, cut it with something sour, and that'll cut the sesame down. That would be ideal, is cut it with some sour, like some lemon or something like that. Okay. That's kind of the 5 fundamentals of cooking. This is just a brief tutorial about those different flavors, of course. As you get into the vlogs, you're going to see me actually use them and how to blend them with different dishes. So again, you have sweet, you have sour, you have salty, you have savory, and you have bitter. So I encourage you to look them up, to play around, have fun with your food, start creating a relationship with your food. Make it a creative play. Of course, you want it to be quick and easy, but start playing in the kitchen.